Hello everyone. For the last few days, we have been learning how to read a story and understand what is happening in the story. How do we do it? We start by reading the story, then we self-monitor to understand what is happening in the story. How do we self-monitor? We read the story, we find out any difficult words or difficult sentences which we cannot understand. Then we read the sentence again, we read before it, we read after it, and then we try to make sense of what we are reading. That is how we continue reading the story and try to understand what is happening in the story. So when we are reading a story, we also have to understand the different characters in the story. So this is our objective today. We will be able to identify the characters in the story and describe them by using reference from the story. What does reference from the story means? This means we will find out text in the story which tells us something about the character. We have already done this yesterday. Today we will continue practicing it a little bit more. The story we have been reading is The Friendly Mongoose. It is a story from the Panchatantra. Who are the characters in the story? We have already done this in our last lesson. So the characters in the story are the farmer, the farmer's wife, the mongoose, and the baby. Next, we went on to describe the characters. So how do we describe the character? First, we read the story. Second, we find out what is the character doing or saying. Third, we then find out what does this tell us about the character. Yesterday, we practiced the describing the character for the farmer. This is how we describe the character of the farmer. First, we list down what is the character doing or saying. Then, we list down what we can tell about the character from what they are doing or saying. So, for example, when we start reading the story, at the very beginning of the story, the farmer tells his wife, "We must have a pet." So what does this tell us about the farmer? It tells us that the farmer loved animals and he thought they were friends. Next, the farmer told his wife not to be afraid of the mongoose. It's a friendly animal. What does this tell us about the farmer? This tells us that the farmer loved the mongoose. He trusted the mongoose and thought him as a friend. After that, as we continued reading the story, we found out that the farmer went out to look at his fields when he did not have anything to do at home. This tells us that he liked his fields and took great care of them. When he was out, the farmer met some of his friends and he did not return for a long time. What does this tell us about the farmer? It tells us that the farmer was very friendly. He had many friends. He did not worry much. That is why he left his baby son home alone with the mongoose. This also tells us that he trusted the mongoose. So this is what we did yesterday. Then I gave you a homework to describe the character of the farmer's wife and the mongoose. This is what we discussed in class today from all your answers. So first, what is the character doing and what does it tell us about the character? The farmer's wife liked the idea of having a pet. She thought that the mongoose will be a friend for their son. This is what we read at the start of the story. What does this tell us about the farmer's wife? It tells us that she liked the mongoose. She went to the market to buy groceries. This happens later in the story. What does this tell us about the farmer's wife? This tells us she did all the housework and the farmer spent his time in the field, farming. What happens next? The farmer's wife came home from shopping. She saw the mongoose covered in blood. She threw her groceries basket on the mongoose and killed it. What does this tell us about the farmer's wife? This tells us she loved her baby and was worried about its safety. She did not trust the mongoose. That is why as soon as she saw the blood, she killed the mongoose. Then she acted without thinking. She acted hastily. As soon as she saw the blood on the mongoose, she thought that the mongoose had killed her baby. She did not go and check what happened to the baby first. That is why she killed the mongoose. So she acted here without even thinking. She acted hastily. Hastily means very fast without thinking. So next we went on to summarize the character of the farmer's wife. What is summarize? Summarize means to tell something in short, only the main points. So how did we summarize the farmer's wife's character? The farmer's wife did all the housework and the farmer worked in the field. She liked the mongoose, but she did not trust him. She thought the mongoose will harm her baby. She loved her baby very much. When she saw the blood on the mongoose, she thought the mongoose had killed her baby. She acted without thinking and killed the mongoose. This is how we summarize the character of the farmer's wife. Next, our homework was to describe the character of the mongoose. This is what we did. We listed down what the character was doing and then we found out what it tells us about the character. So first, the mongoose played with the baby. This tells us that the mongoose was very friendly. Second, the mongoose waited for the farmer's wife to return. This also tells us that he liked the farmer's wife. The mongoose killed the snake. This tells us that the mongoose was very brave. He loved the baby. Next, we summarize the character of the mongoose. The mongoose was cute. We read in the story that the mongoose had black shiny eyes and a bushy tail. He was a very friendly animal. He loved the farmer's wife and waited for her to return when she went out. He also loved the baby and cared for him. He was a brave animal. He killed the snake to save the baby. Now I want you to think. The mongoose sat outside the door waiting for the farmer's wife to return. We said in class, this is because he loved the farmer's wife. What do you think can be another reason for the mongoose to sit outside the door and wait? So how will you answer that? You have to think. What did the mongoose do when the farmer's wife was away? How would the mongoose feel after killing the snake? What would the mongoose think the farmer's wife would tell him for killing the snake and saving her baby? Now, why do you think would he wait for the farmer's wife to return? Think.